The result of what I'm saying here is that there are parts of the world running out of water, and you will read about it as drought because nobody knows any other language, and it's too scary to use other language. But some scientists are now beginning to name these as hot stains, parts of the world that are physically, literally running out of water as we speak. So you drain and drain and drain, and you go deeper. And anybody who knows India and has watched the draining of the aquifers there is not surprised now that we're beginning to see violence in communities where somebody gets to a water hole first, or a public water tap that's very limited and somehow gets in line first. There's now great violence beginning to grow as this water becomes more scarce. And of course we know that every 8 seconds somewhere in our world a child is dying of waterborne disease, and in every single case they would not be dying if their parents could afford it. This is where water has been priced out of the range of the ability for people to pay. And it's not going in the right direction. With all the work at the United Nations and the Millennium Development Fund, we're going in the wrong direction. Just one example is Africa, where there are 22 countries in absolute water crisis now, and where all 677 major lakes are in crisis, every single one of them. The United Nations says that at the moment, 1 in 3 people in Africa, in all of the countries of Africa, do not have access to clean water. In 10 to 12 years, that will be 1 in 2. So as you can see, we're dramatically going in the other direction, even with all the work that's being done, hooking people up to pipes and trying to meet that millennium goal. So I think it's important for us to come back to our situation here in Canada and British Columbia and on the island here with that knowledge in mind, because there isn't going to be very long in the future before we start to understand that the most precious thing we have is a clean environment and clean, adequate water that sustains a living ecosystem. And we're going to have to turn our heads completely around and stop seeing water as a resource for us, for our convenience, our wealth, and our profit, and rather as the essential element of the living ecosystem that we have to protect. And we're going to have to start building our societies around the protection of these watersheds. Now, what does that bring us here in Canada? Well, more than just about any country in the world, we have bought this myth of abundance. We have so much water, we don't need to protect it, we don't need to bring in laws to guide it. We can do whatever we want. The state of protection of our waters, both provincially and federally, is absolutely appalling in our country. Our National Water Act is 40 years old and desperately in need of upgrade. We have no national drinking water standards, and while the drinking water in most of our municipalities is good, because the municipalities have insisted on this, in First Nations communities around the country, the story is a very different one and a terrible one. We have no groundwater protection just about in most provinces, and we have not mapped our groundwater, so we don't know the sustainability of the systems that we have, and we don't know when we allow bottled water companies or mining companies or pulp and paper or energy companies or whoever unlimited, cheap, very cheap, or even free access or even subsidized access to this water, whether that's sustainable or not. We haven't any idea. We've just had this notion that it was always there, will always be there, and there's nothing to be worried about. And I think we're going to have to take a long look at exports like wheat exports, because they're coming from the part of the country that has the least amount of available fresh water and is producing about 60% of these exports for this grain trade for export. It's going to take a different government perhaps than one has in Alberta at the moment to really have the courage to look at it. But I fear for Alberta the way I fear for California and places in the Southwest, and I think the model for these places is Australia, which just relentlessly mined the water of the Murray-Darling to grow cotton and rice and whatever else. Now it's wine, and they export it all over the world, and they have suddenly hit the water wall. We need to see this coming ahead of time, and we know it's coming, and we still just put the blinkers on as they did in Australia and say, well, we'll wait till we run out. It's open season in our country with mining, energy, agribusiness, bottled water. We have, as I don't have to tell the people in this room, the destruction that's taken place on this island, and of course you're going to hear from people whose lives that is today. We have no plan. This government, the Harper government, has no plan to deal with the rising temperatures and the fact that we have 1,300 glaciers in this country, and every single one of them is melting. Every one of them is due for full melt with time. I was in Copenhagen for the Disastrous Climate Summit, and our country, it was not only the only country to first ratify Kyoto and then officially back out of it, we were the only country to go into Copenhagen with the announcement that we were going to fail. Isn't that lovely? I don't know if you know, the official time of the Canadian government's presentation in Copenhagen was 3.5 minutes. That's how much time we gave to it. I started, if you went, I don't know how much you guys know about Copenhagen, but Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General, decided the year before that he wanted to make it sexy, so he hired a big marketing firm in New York and London to come up with a slogan, and they came up with Copenhagen, and they got these corporations, mostly Coca-Cola and a few others, to promote this Copenhagen concept. So when you got off the plane, there were little Coca-Cola elves handing you Coca-Cola bottles, and all through the city there were ads, and mostly Coke ads, with little children running in clean water. Never mention anything about bottled water, of course, with, you know, brought to you by Coca-Cola and the UN Summit on Climate Change. For all the world, you would have thought this is co-sponsored with Coca-Cola. I started calling it Copenhagen because it really settled in my mind as just a corporate-sponsored trade show, which was really appalling, which is one of the reasons it ended in such failure. But we have no plan in this country, and that, of course, is because the government, the Harper government, has every intention of maintaining its support for the tar sands of northern Alberta. It looks like the federal Liberals are on the exact same page. And those tar sands are slated to grow 5-fold at the moment. Now, who knows what will happen with world energy prices, but at the moment, those are the plans. And we're destroying something like 3.5 million barrels of water, liters of water every single day in the tar sands. And as you know, they're being held in these great big toxic dams. Some very new important research from the world-renowned water scientist David Schindler shows that this is, of course, leaching because, of course, water travels to water and moves, one system moves into another. We have cancer clusters in 4-year-olds up in Fort Chipewyan. People there cannot drink the water, they cannot hunt, they cannot fish. When they catch fish, they have 3 eyes and 2 mouths. And this is in one of the formerly most pristine areas of our country. We're also promoting the privatization of services as much as we can. The Harper government is involved in a number of trade agreements. The fast ramping up of the agreement on internal trade, which is really setting very strict conditions for lowering the barrier right across the country. The newly signed agreement with the United States to try to do a little bit of a run around their Buy America, but mostly we're very concerned about something coming up called the Canada-European Union Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, and I urge you to learn more about it. Go to our website, Canadians.org. This is the biggest trade agreement Canada has ever negotiated, and it will, for the first time, get at and allow private service companies to get at the whole concept of subnational procurement, which is all the money that's spent by provinces, municipalities, schools, universities, water systems, you name it. They also will have the right to challenge any conditions and rules such as buying local or fair trade rules or bottled water bans or green energy promotion. Anything that they could argue would be trade restrictive will be on the table.